Right, hello everyone. I mentioned this in my last video about Donald Trump disavowing the alt-right, but I figured I'd make another video about it, just particularly about the issue of intellectual merry-go-rounds and, to use the words of Joe Owens. Now, this isn't a video directed primarily, or no, not really primarily at Joe Owens himself, but rather at the general topic of, quote, movements, unquote. Of course, I don't see what I'm a part of, what the alt-right is a part of, what white nationalism is a part of, etc., etc. I don't see it really in terms of a movement. I see it as a social response to a zeitgeist shift, which is occurring due to socioeconomic factors and migration. There are obviously spiritual elements, but those are invisible to most people, so there's no reason to talk about them, at least not in this sort of format. So, people like me, who manage websites, who make videos, podcasts, etc., videos like this, where I talk, share my opinions, people listen, get the cogs in people's minds whirring, and they comment, things are discussed, argued, thought about, etc., etc. We often get attacked, criticized for being armchair intellectuals or pseudo intellectuals. I've had it before. I don't particularly care because I'm a little arrogant sometimes. I don't really hold the opinions of most people in particularly high esteem. Unless someone who can prove to me that they have authority, then that's fine. I'll listen to them. Otherwise, it's just the same old boring shit that you get on the internet and all the rest. Anyways, I wanted to kind of respond to this idea that making podcasts and websites, etc., is a waste of time. Because I don't think it is at all. In fact, I think it's extremely important, especially in our current age, one of mass media, where millions of people get their information about the world from the internet, from what they talk about at school and college and university and in the workplace. People are no longer confined to a little bit of information here and there, what they get from their priest or town crier or whatever. They now actively seek it out themselves, and it's presented to them on a silver platter. It's the perfect opportunity for people who are interested in talking about the truth, now that we have the internet, and have had the internet for a few years now, to expose people to that truth. The mainstream media, big corporations like the BBC, MSNBC, the American sites, the Australian sites, almost all kind of establishment media corporations, they're run by people with a limited set of beliefs, people with a very constricted ideology. That ideology, of course, is progressivism. Progressivism in various flavors, right from soft kind of socialite liberalism all the way to the far end to post-Marxism, etc., etc. You get basically only the left wing dominating these industries, because it's the left which dominates academia and so on, for various reasons. But now more than ever is the time for people who aren't of that mind, and who see that mind and that way of doing things as a problem, to come forward and give their 2 cents and hopefully convince a few people of another kind of way, of other arguments, another way of looking at the world, of understanding the world, of behaving, of acting, of living, making decisions in life, etc., etc. Because it's clear that the liberal, or left-leaning, left-wing kind of intellectual establishment, intelligentsia, is going wrong in various ways, in various respects. People have to be around to pick up the people who are hurt by that. This is how Trump won, because this kind of corporate left, kind of almost an oxymoron to say that, but it isn't really, have betrayed a huge number of people in the countries that they ought to be serving and protecting and maintaining, in the civilizations they ought to be representing and building up. millions of people in America have been let down by this liberal intellectual elite, as we know, and that's why Trump won the white working class vote. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't chance, or because of irrational racism, or any other fucking dumb shit people come up with. It's because Donald Trump offered an alternative to what these detached, cosmopolitan, deracinated, uprooted materialists have to offer. Going out and marching in the streets politically is only worthwhile if it's big. People now in the world respond to spectacles. They respond to things which garner the most media attention. They respond to things which people talk about, which has a lot of retweets on Twitter. As pathetic as it is, that's how the masses respond to things. Your mass men in the world, your mass of people, your common folk, are dull and idiotic. They are not intelligent by their very nature. They are not intellectually curious. I mean, everyone knows this. You go to school. People like myself and the people who I associate with, I would consider more intelligent. People who are aware, intellectually curious, very rational. But you go to school, you go to university, whatever. You know people in life who might remember a lot of facts and who might be able to work their way through things logically, but they have no wisdom to them, and they have no actual deep intelligence to them. You don't sit around these people and you don't get a vibe of anything grand or deep from them. And compare that to, for example, from history in the 20th century, Corneliu Codreanu, who was a man of deep wisdom and charisma. The peasant people believed him to be the incarnation of the Archangel Michael. But people who are profound and interesting and unique and who stand out. Your average cosmopolitan intellectual who is directly responsible for feeding information and knowledge to the common folk. In a democracy, by the way, which is technically controlled by the common folk. Not always as simple as that, but there you go. Those people are incomparable. Your kind of deracinated cosmopolitan leftist, who controls ultimately how people believe, because they control how information is exposed to people, how it's filtered through to them, how it's framed, how it's juxtaposed to other images to suggest things in the minds of people subliminally, subrationally, subconsciously. That individual is nothing but a Machiavellian, scheming materialist looking out for their own paycheck. For example, and you get this even with people who have, quote, principles, unquote. I was approached the other week by a guy working for Amnesty International. I was in town and I was walking home, and this guy approached me, and he asked me about refugees and all this sort of shit, and I gave him my opinion. And it was obviously he'd never heard my opinion before. My opinion obviously was, standard right-wing opinion. Obviously I'm not a particularly brash person with language. I can be quite articulate when I try to be, but I was quite relaxed. I was quite ordinary with this guy. I was quite informal. But we were talking for a few minutes, and then he goes, we need to wrap this conversation up because I'm not getting paid to talk. I'm getting paid to hand out flyers. And just 5 seconds before that, this moron was telling me all about charity and virtue. And I'm wanting to do good in the world and this sort of thing. No, he just cares about money. Same as all of these other, principled liberals and humanists, experts and all these sorts of people. But these are the people who are influencing the world. It does matter what the common folk think in a democratic age. Trump won not because of the machinations of the elite, but in spite of the machinations of the elite. If you're talking in terms of politics, the opinions of the masses dictate that, and what dictates the opinions of the masses and what they believe is the information that they receive and how they receive it. And that's something which extends beyond local politics, door-to-door politics, and these sorts of things. It's something which extends to large socio-economic and migratory factors, such as the European migrant crisis, such as Islamic terrorism. What political groups can do is to respond to those events and to those factors in a timely and intelligent way, to catch people when they fall, so to speak. So when your average mass man sees his family blown up by an Islamic terrorist, then you have perhaps a nationalist or a populist or a patriotic cause to catch him when he falls and say, okay, the liberal media won't tell you why this is happening, but we can. And that's how people's opinions change in a real sense. Especially with the young. Especially with modern young people who have grown up on the internet. Look at the response of young millennials to Trump. Actual crying and shaking and hysteria and emotional outrage. Because none of these special snowflakes have ever not been able to get their own way. They've been told their entire lives that they're special and deserve everything they get and can have everything in the whole world. And all they've had to do is throw a tantrum when that doesn't happen. And now all of a sudden there's a president in the White House, or a president-elect who will be in the White House, who they think uses mean language and, is a rapist and a Hitler and all the rest of it. And look how they're reacting. Rational argument doesn't get to these people. So, intellectual playpens, to again use the words, to commandeer the words of Joe Owens, who I do have immense respect for. Just for people who don't know, Joe Owens is a veteran English nationalist. He's been involved in nationalism since, I believe, the 70s. He was the bodyguard for Nick Griffin. He worked with the BNP during its kind of golden age. He's been there, he's done that regarding street activism and marches and all these sorts of things. He's someone people should listen to and should take seriously. But I think he's too dismissive of intellectual playpens and of people talking about issues. Because now more than ever is the time we're talking about issues and creating a counter media and a counter narrative and a counter entertainment / information kind of current. It now is the time where it will be more effective than ever. Indeed, I think this is how you have to communicate with people. Look at some of the videos about the election, the US election, for instance. Millions of people have watched them. Millions of people. It isn't just a few people sat on their computers at home who are hobbyists and into politics. But people will share things on Facebook. Look at how many replays some of the videos that Trump has put out on his Facebook page. Some of those videos have tens of millions of repeats. Because all it takes is a friend of a friend on Facebook to like it. And then it shows up in your timeline. And all you have to do is scroll down to it and it automatically plays. And even if someone just watches it for 5 minutes, or no, sorry, not 5 minutes, 5 seconds even, then they might be exposed to something which they didn't expect. To something which assists in the emotional deconditioning and or catches them when they fall, when they've become suspicious of certain things. There are loads of Democrats who voted for Trump. Loads of Obama voters voted for Trump. Loads of women voted for Trump. Despite what the Cosmopolitans were telling us. So yeah. Can I wrap things up there, as we've been going long enough? 14 minutes now. I think so. I think most of this is common sense. I do think electoral politics, etc., is important. People should engage with these things. But I think the right people should engage with these things. I don't think it's everyone's vocation to do those things and be involved in those sorts of areas. Personally, I don't think it's my vocation, just going by my personality and my character, to go out handing leaflets to people and knocking on doors and that sort of thing, involved with the campaign. I wouldn't be good at it, just because of my personality type. So, for some people, writing and managing websites and doing podcasts, that's how they do what they want to do. If they want to involve themselves with a cause or a phenomenon or a network, as the alt-right is, for example, then doing what I'm doing is all they really can do. and that's what they're good at. And personally, I'm quite proud of what I've been able to do. And I know for a fact, as I've said a few times on podcasts, I've had people come to me and tell me that I've changed their opinions about certain things. You know, it's a small number of people, but it's still something. And now, like I said, more than ever, if you want to effect change upon the world for the better, it's the time to do it through mass information, mass communication, mass media, etc. To provide that counter narrative. You know, so yeah, thank you for listening.